Miss Wahida and Miss Shafika. First of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present this academic forum. Today, our discussion focuses on a topic that is become increasingly important in education, especially in Malaysia, which is well known for its rich cultural and linguistic diversity. The title of our forum is Using Multicultural Literary Materials in the Bilingual and Multilingual Context. As future preschool educators, we often focus on teaching children how to read, write, and listen and speak in English. However, language learning is never just about grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. Every language carries culture, identity, belief, traditions, and values. Today's children are growing up in classrooms where one children may speak Malay at home, others may speak Mandarin, Chinese, Tamil, Iban Kadazan, or even several language at the same time. Therefore, the question we must ask ourselves is about how can teachers use multicultural literary materials to support language learning while respecting every child's identity? This is exactly what we will explore today. Before we before we giving discussion, strategies and solution, I would first like to invite our first panelist to show their personal reflection. Miss Shafika, when you think about teaching English in such culturally diverse classroom, what comes to your mind?
Okay, thank you, Naviha. So I've been thinking if I'm standing in front of the class, feeling with children from a different backgrounds, I will be in context. I will be feeling very context, which is firstly I will feel very happy and excited. Well, secondly I will feel really nervous and anxious. So about happy, why I become really happy because I got to listen to their unique story and and I also got to know about their language at home. So, and secondly, about the anxious one and the nervous one. I'm sorry. About the nervous one, I feel nervous because teaching isn't an easy task. Firstly, because if we read the books about the multicultures, it's not just about the clothes, foods, or the attire they are wearing. It's all about their culture, histories, and more. So, I've been giving an example. If I'm teaching the classroom, but but I only talk about the surface, like asking them what is what is the American native, okay, and I told them the story. But at the same time, they only got the illustrations of thinking about the pictures, what are they wearing, what are they eating. But in the end, they didn't understand anything. They don't understand anything inside it. Like they know nothing about the social culture at all. Okay, so as a teacher, I must provide them more information about these truths. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shafika. I think many future teachers can relate to those mixed emotions. You mentioned something very important that multicultural teaching requires cultural understanding, not simply colorful books. So I noticed Miss Wahida nodding while Shafika was speaking. So Miss Wahida, would you like to respond?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Nabiha. So, when I listen to Shafika, it reminds me why I chose early childhood education in the first place. So, whenever I think about children's literature, I don't think about language learning. All I think is about discovering who they are actually. So many people right now assume that nursery rhymes, songs, Short stories are only used to are only used to teach vocabulary, but I see them differently. For example, like every 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 nursery rhyme, every traditional songs, every poems, every vocative, every every stories carries generations of culture and human experience. So for me, for young children, literature becomes the first window through which they learn about themselves and other people. So I feel emotional whenever I see bilingual children reading stories that reflect their own family background. So imagine a Malay child reading a story um, inspired by Sangkanche, Chinese child recognizing tradition celebration according Chinese New Year, Indian child hearing a familiar folk song translated into English. So I think that small moment can completely change a child's confidence. Instead of thinking, I don't belong to me, I don't belong here, the child begins thinking that my culture matters. So for me, that is one of the most beautiful experiences as a teacher can create.
Okay, this is very touching perspective, Miss Wahida. I especially like your statement that English should become a bridge rather than a barrier. Before we continue, I would like both of you to reflect on another important question. So many teachers still believe that language teaching should focus only on grammar and vocabulary. So do you guys agree with that statement? Miss Shafika, you can begin.
Thank you, Nabiha. And in my opinion, I'm a bit disagree with because grammars and vocabulary are important to children because they need it to communicate effectively. However, language culture have a little meaning. And I'm giving example. So I teach the children to speak about the gratitude, like thank you. But at the same time, in another country, in another culture, they didn't use thank you. Some of them even use bow, handshake, thumbs ups. Even some show their respect to the elders. And for me, if we only teach the word but ignore the cultural context, students only know language but fail to communicate properly towards, towards the realities of the words. Okay, thank you. That's it from me.
This is an interesting point. So language is not only about speaking correctly, but also knowing when and how to use it appropriately. So, Miss Wahida, what is your opinion?
In my personal opinion, I would like to add another perspective. So, children do not learn language um, inside the textbooks, but they learn language through experiences. So, actually, at our for example, act out stories, perform puppet shows, and also we can as a teacher we can play a role games, so they are not only memorizing English words, but educational psychologists often remind us that children remember information better when learning involves emotion. Therefore, multicultural literature provides emotional learning together with language learning. So, for example, like instead of simply teaching the word family, so teachers could read different stories showing different family structures around the world. And children will understand that although families may look different, but the love, care, and respect are universal values. So that is the true power of multicultural literature.
Okay. Thank you very much, Miss Wahida and Miss Shafika, for your insightful reflection. From our discussion, so far we can clearly see that multicultural literature is far from than an English teaching resource. So it helps children with identity, confidence, empathy, and intercultural understanding. However, despite this wonderful benefit, today's teachers continue to face many challenges when selecting and using multicultural literacy materials. So, in the next session of our forum, we will move from personal reflection to evidence-based this discussion. We will as we will examine the current realization in bilingual and multilingual classroom, identify the major issues faced by educators, and explore why these issues become struggle to them. Okay, thank you for Ms. Wahida as Ms. Shafika for your insightful reflection. From our previous discussion, we have learned that multicultural literature is not only about teaching English but also about developing children's identity, empathy, and cultural awareness. However, every educational approach comes with its own challenges. So, as a future teachers, we should not only understand as the benefit but also recognize the realities happen in today's classroom. So now, let's move into our second segment where we will discuss the fact and issues surrounding the use of multicultural literary materials in bilingual and multilingual classroom. So, Ms. Shafika, let's begin with you. Based on the current educational landscape, why do you think multicultural literary materials have become so important in today's classroom?
So, um, in my opinion, I think the main cause is the classroom already changing. As we see that it's common to find the children speak different language even at homes, like speaking English with parents, speaking Mandarin with grandparents, speaking Malaysian, speaking Bahasa Melayu with siblings. Okay, so with that, teacher cannot rely on one perspective anymore because some research show that children they learn through their experience and put it into their new acknowledgements. And learning will be more meaningful that way because they already begin to understand everything before we even expose them to more deeper learnings. And yet still the quality of multicultural still inconsistent for me.
Okay, that's an interesting point. So, could you explain what you mean by inconsistent quality?
So I mean by so that is because I found it's one major issue, which is nowadays I found that market storybooks often change the storylines. They change the original story, such as the traditional folk tales and history book that's now only created to match with the commercial levels, not for the children's. And secondly, when it's really changed, students or kids didn't really know about their original cultures. So we need to ask ourselves, is that we really teach them about the original storylines of our culture, or we just simply teach them a new things that been putting on the modern words in culture.
So, that's a very thought provoking question. So, I want to ask Ms. Wahida, do you agree with Shafika's concerns?
Yes, of course, I completely agree with Shafika because, in fact, I believe that this issue is more obvious when we use nursery rhymes, poems, and also traditional songs. So, traditional form much shorter than stories. So, when it's become more shorter, it will bring significant meaning to children. And traditional nursery rhymes often contains idioms, historical references, humor, and cultural symbols that children from another background may not immediately understand. So you imagine you asking preschool Malaysian to sing and to sing English nursery rhymes containing historical traditionals. So maybe it may successful. Maybe the children may successfully memorize the lyrics, but do they actually understand what they are singing? Probably not, because same situation happened when that children read English stories. So, but it's translated folk songs without understands the cultural context.
Oh, so you're suggesting that language barriers are not the only challenges? So there is also a cultural barrier. Um,
Exactly. So cultural barrier even harder than the language itself. So imagine bilingual child trying to understand um, traditional English forms and
so you're suggesting that language barriers are not the only challenges. There is also a cultural barrier.
exactly, because cultural barrier even harder than the language itself. So imagine bilingual child trying to understand traditional English form. The child has to decode unfamiliar vocabulary. So instead of focusing learning English, the child brain will become overwhelmed to try to try and understand everything simultaneously. So the result, the child will lose their confidence. The child will become quiet and also stop participating um, together. So, as a teacher, I think this is why some of teachers need to provide cultural support, not just language, but also cultural support.
Okay, this makes the perfect sense. It reminds us that understanding culture is essential for meaningful communication. Now, I would like to both of you to discuss another issue. That many teachers say that multicultural books are already available online. If that's true, why do classrooms still struggle to implement multicultural education effectively? Can Miss Shafika explain that?
Okay, so that's a good questions. And availability does not mean accessibility. Okay, as we know, thousand book may exist, but little teacher does have a limited time to evaluate resource carefully. Example, right now books show culture through festival, through foods, and through attire they are wearing. But it's only that because in the books they show the posters of because in the books they might show the illustration, but they didn't show the deeper meaning in it. So children only will know the surface. They didn't know the means of historical inside it. And so as a teacher, if our children only see those images, they may only develop a oversimplified idea. That's upon me.
Oh, that's a powerful statement. Teachers must become critical readers first. So, Miss Wahida, would you like to expand on these issues?
Yes, of course, definitely. So another issues representations is, however, sometimes teachers genuinely want to include multicultural materials, but they unintentionally choose stories where minority culture only appear as supporting character. So the main heroes often will come from dominant culture, and then as a result, some children rarely see themselves represented as a leader problem problem solver, and also successful characters because representation is matters. So when child see characters who share their language, appearance, family experience, they will believe that their own identity is valuable. So I think as a educator, we should ensure every child has opportunities to see themselves reflected positively in literature.
Thank you. Now I would like to introduce another scenarios. Imagine you are teaching an English lesson using traditional folktale from another country. One student suddenly says, "Teacher, this story is strange. My family doesn't do this." So how would both of you respond? Miss Shafika, perhaps you could answer that.
Okay, so if I were the teachers, firstly I would task them for sharing the informations and told them it's a beautiful observations instead of telling them that's how the story goes. And third, I would love to encourage them to discuss the similarity and the difference between the cultures instead of letting the other ones or the other sides to dominate the whole difference. While then, I would love to create respectful classroom where the children get to know each other's background, get to understand the difference, the simplicity that still there's many cultures inside this world. And then I will appreciate and judge the students. That's all for me.
Oh, wow, that's an excellent approach. Miss Wahida, can you continue that?
Yes, of course. So I would probably do something similar with Miss Shafika. So I will invite the whole class to become cultural explorers. So instead of asking which culture is correct, I will ask, why do you think people from different places develop different cultures and also traditions? And that is simple change encouragement, curiosity instead of critical criticism. Criticism. So children become researchers. They begin asking questions. They will compare their ideas with the other students, and most importantly, they will learn to respect differences, different culture, tradition, and also background. For me, that is the one of the important things that we have as a teacher we have to do.
Okay, I really like the phrase "culture explores." So it changed the entire atmosphere of learning. So before we move to our next segment, I would like to ask the final question in one sentences. What do you think is the biggest issue teachers most overcome when using multicultural literary materials? Miss Sharika?
For me, the biggest issue is balancing language, learning with authentic cultures and representations. That's all.
Oh, thank you, Miss Wahida.
So for me, the greatest challenge is ensuring every child feels seen and also respected and included, regardless of their cultural background. Yes.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Miss Shafika and Miss Wahida. So today's discussion has shown us that although multicultural literature often tremendous educational value, teachers still face challenges such as cultural misunderstanding, oversimplified resource, limited teacher preparation, and unequal representation. Fortunately, these challenges are not impossible to overcome. So in our next segment, we will move beyond identifying problems and begin exploring practical classroom solutions. So both panelists will introduce teaching strategies that educators can immediately apply in bilingual and multilingual classroom, complete with example using stories, nursery rhymes, poems, songs, and folk tales. See you to the next part. Welcome back to our forum. So, throughout our discussion, we have identified several important challenges such as cultural misunderstanding, authentic learning materials, and the difficulties faced by bilingual and multilingual learners. However, identifying problem is only the first step. As future educators, we must also ask ourselves, how can we solve these issues in our classroom? Today, we are only discussing theories but also practical teaching strategies that can be implemented with preschool and primary learners. To begin this segment, I would like to invite Ms. Wahida to introduce her first teaching strategies.
Okay, so thank you, Nabiha. And the one strategy that I highly recommend is comparative text approach, which is the main idea was very simple because children will understand new idea more easily when they can relate something that they know. So instead of we as a teacher introduce an unfamiliar English story immediately, teachers can first activate children knowledge by using their culture. So, for example, moral value honesty. So, teachers can introduce folktale like Sang Kancil and Buaya, where it discusses about honesty, about cleverness, using their first language, which is Bahasa Melayu. So once the children already understand the moral lesson, the teacher will introduce English story. So the English story must be related with the the first Bahasa Melayu story, which is Sang Kancil and Buaya. So the English story is The Boy Who Cried Wolf. So although the story is come from different culture, come from different background and also language, but it has a same similar values. So when the children already understand the concept of honesty, they can now concentrate on learning English vocabulary, sentence structure, pronunciation, and also grammar instead of the children must struggling to understand the storyline. So I think this will approach reduce cognitive overload and build children's confidence even more.
So that sounds very practical. So instead of learning at two difficulties things at the same time, children first understand the concept and then learn the language. So yeah, I think I want to ask Miss Wahida again. What is the concept and the learn? What is the concept and then what will children learn the language?
Thank you. I think this strategy also can encourage critical thinking of the children lah. Because the teachers can ask questions like how is Sankanchil similar to the Shepherd Boy, or which character made a good decision. So this question, when the teacher asks this question like this, can encourage children to compare the cultures while practicing English. And then they are not only simplified to memorizing vocabulary, but they are also thinking, analyzing, and also communicating with their friends and also the teacher.
Okay, I really like that the idea. So children become active thinkers rather than positive listeners. So I want to ask Ms. Shafika, you've been listening carefully. Do you have another strategies and the complements Wahida's approach, Miss Wahida's approach?
Absolutely. I perfectly agree with Miss Wahida. However, I prefer TPR, or should I call total sticker response, because young children enjoy moving and they got easily bored if they stay in one place. And so, as a teacher, through those response or learning strategy, I got to identify the difficulty vocabulary through the movements. And also, the second thing is I need to use or we need to use the real project and object. So we cannot simply tell them to imagine because not everything they think will be the same as what we see. And second, if, and also children begin to connect language easily through the real object as I said before because they simply understand everything and every single object. They got to share their insights with their friends and that's all.
Okay, that's so much more meaningful than simply asking children to repeat the word. So I want you explain more about that.
Okay, so after introducing or told them to repeat the movements, I also told them to repeat the phrase because this can help children to remember the pattern naturally. And children see, I give you one example. Children, they easily remember song like head and shoulders, knees and toes, it's like that. They easily remember until now. If we still ask them right now, they can show it to us. And after a few years they still can connect it. So it might be a good strategy for me.
Okay, that's true. Many of us can still remember nursery rhymes from childhood simply because we sung and act them out.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Shafika. Now I would like to both of you another question to ask both of you another questions. So technology is becoming increasingly common in early childhood classroom. So how can teachers combine multicultural literature with digital learning? Ms. Wahida can answer this.
So, technology offers many exciting opportunities. For example, as a teacher, we can use animated digital storybooks that include narration, sound effects, and also subtitle to the children will understand. So, children not only read the story but also hear the authentic pronunciation. So they can learn the right grammar. They can learn how to speak with other people correctly and how to pronounce the sentence without any trouble. So when we do the activity like animated digital, like I said, so
Yeah.
the teacher can pause the story and ask question to the children. Like we can like we show them the stories and then it will play and then we can pause and then ask the children the question. So for example we can ask the children like what do you think will happen next, so it can so we can like ask the children and they can think, they can guess what will happen next stories. So the next question that we can ask is, why do you think the character made that decision? And also, this will encourage listening, speaking, and also critical thinking simultaneously for the children. And the teacher also can use interactive whiteboards and also where the children can drag pictures and also match the vocabulary with the picture. And then with doing this activity, I think learning will become more active rather than passive.
Wow, that's the excellent idea. So now I want to ask Ms. Shafika, based on the Ms. Wahida ideas, what digital tools would you recommend?
So I will usually use wood walls, Painted, and more. But my favorite tool is Canva because it's easily designed game based on story and just like matching the character with the correct cultures. And we also can put the songs and many things in it, which can help children to integrate their listening, writing, or even the other skills. While then, children can also be a storyteller themselves because they already know the storyline where I put it. I think that's
That sounds very engaging, engaging for your learners. Besides improving languages skills, it also encourages creativity. So I would also like to ask about classroom activities. Suppose your teacher a multicultural picture books to 5 years old children. What activity would you conduct after reading, Miss Wahida?
Okay, thank you. As for me, I will organize a role play activity, which is familiar with that activity, right? So, the children would choose different characters from the story and act them out. So, for example, like Sangkancil and Buaya. So the children will choose which is they want to be a Sangkancil or they want to be a Buaya, which the two character there's a different character. So while they acting, they can practice speaking English naturally because um, Sangkancil and Buaya is like common story right now in the children their self kan.
It's okay.
So um, the story, so they already know how the plot of the story, so they can like communicate with their friends using the character they choose. So after the role play, I will ask a reflective question, such as like, how did the character feel? Because they choose the character, so they know how the character feel, right? So the next question that I will ask is, what would you do if you are in the situation? And then, is there a similar story in your own culture, so they can express their feeling if they know others stories about other stories that similar to Sangkancil and Buaya. And I think this activity will develop speaking skills, empathy, and also intercultural understanding at the same time.
That's an excellent and wonderful idea. So, Miss Shafika, you want to talk more about that?
Yes, if it was me, I'm gonna organize an activity called Culture Corner, which means each week, the children will bring a simple object, which means they got to exchange the things or cultural items from home. With that, we got to know that the children will see each other's items. So, I give you an example. Iban kids or Melayu kids brings sambal, brings nasi lemak, while then the other Indian kid will bring chapati or the other things like that, or foods. I'm sorry. And this activity helped to gain more confidence and show that every culture has a value, which means I will teach them how to respect and how to appreciate the other culture without showing a dominating. Okay. I think
Well,
that all.
thank you, Ms. Shafika and Ms. Wahida. Today's discussion has clearly shown that multicultural literature becomes much more meaningful when teachers use appropriate teaching strategies. Whether through competitive reading, total physical response, role-playing, digital storytelling, or interactive classroom activities, the ultimate goal remains the same: to create an inclusive learning environment where every child feels valued while developing strong language skills. As our forum is gradually coming to an end, we will now move to our final segment. In part of 4, both of panelists will share their final recommendation for future educators before I conclude today's discussion. Welcome back and move on to this next segment. Thank you, Ms. Shafika and Ms. Wahida, for sharing such practical and insightful strategies. Throughout our discussion today, we have explored the importance of multicultural literary materials, the challenge faced by teachers, and several effective teaching strategies that can support bilingual and multilingual learners. As we are approaching the end of our forum, I would like to invite each panelist to share one final recommendation for future educators. If you could give only one piece of advice to teachers who wish to use multicultural literature effectively, what would it be? Miss Shafika, would you like to begin?
Yes, and my recommendation is, as a teacher, we need to choose literary materials carefully because we know that teachers shouldn't choose books or materials simply because of the good illustration or because it has claimed to be multicultural. As we also need to read book critically because we are the one giving information to kids. And before choosing the book, we need to ask like, will every children be respected while we reading the story? Because it's gave two simple issue. If wrong, development if wrong, the develop we can develop inaccurate information and give the children a complex. If it's true, we will help them to become respectful and we will help them to become mm, what we call it. We will help them to become more appreciating towards the other. Okay. And as a teacher, we need to prepare the children to live peacefully in a multicultural society to respect. Okay.
So thank you, Miss Shafika. Now I really like your emphasis and on thoughtful material selection. Sometimes we focus so much on completing the syllabus that we forget to evaluate whether the learning materials truly benefit our students. Now, Miss Wahida, may we hear your final recommendation?
So, to build upon Pika's excellent point, I believe that teachers should go one step further because I recommend is to involve the families and also the local community in language learning, which is learning should never stop at the classroom door, but the children will learn best when school and also home work together. For the example, I think teacher can invite the parents or the grandparents to visit the classroom and also share their traditional stories and also the folk songs. So um, as we know it as children love singing songs, love to sing a song, love to hear song. So I think when we call the parents, we call the grandparents, we call the community to sing a folk songs. Children love listening to real experiences. So I think that activity does more than improve language skills, but it can also help children to appreciate their heritage while learning to respect other culture, and also it can create a stronger partnership between school and also community. I think this is the most importantly because children will realize that every culture deserves any respect.
Thank you, Miss Wahida. That is a wonderful reminder that education is everyone's responsibility, not just the teachers. I would like to ask both of you again one final reflective question before we conclude. Imagine you are teaching in a classroom where children speak five different languages. Some people might see that as a challenge. So would you see it is a challenge or an opportunity, Ms. Shanita?
So I would personally see it as an opportunity because yes, indeed, I need to requires a careful planning. But at the same time, when the kids be able to talk more than one language, which you just spoke, you just state five language, it will make me feel more better when I know that the children will manage to share the other language through the other children, which could affect their multicultural language. And as we know, every language represents valuable knowledge. Instead of asking them to leave their language inside the class, I would love them to do some research about their own culture language, because this is the kind of classroom I hope to build in the future, where all the children be able to will be free to use their own language and understand it at the same time. I
Thank,
think that's all.
thank you, Ms. Shafika. Now, Ms. Wahida, can you continue?
Yes, I completely agree with Shafika. And for me, I think multilingual classroom is beautiful because every child will contribute something unique. Because you imagine, one child may teach people how to greet people with Mandarin, and another child may introduce a traditional Malay folk tale, and also another may share their Indian festival or an indigenous legend. So I think these experiences cannot be found in textbook alone. Yeah, and they come directly from children's lives. So when the classroom full of many multilingual when the
Children.
uh, when the classroom full of multilingual children, so I think it was the best experiences for me to teach them, because instead of seeing diversity as a problem, we can begin seeing it as one of our greatest educational strengths.
Thank you, Ms. Wahida. Those are truly inspiring reflection. Before we end this today forum, allow me to summarize our discussion. Throughout this session, we have discovered that multicultural literary materials are far more than books used to teach English. They help children put language, proficiency while developing empathy, respect, confidence, and cultural awareness. We also discussed several challenges, including the lack of authentic multicultural resource, cultural misunderstanding, cognitive cognitive overload among bilingual learners, limited teachers' preparation, and unique cultural representation in classroom materials. Fortunately, our panelists have demonstrated that this challenge can be addressed through effective teaching strategies. Among the strategies discussion today, where the comparative text approach, where teachers connect familiar cultural stories and with target language text. Total physical response, which combine language learning with movement, role-play storytelling, and classroom discussion, they encourage critical thinking. Also, the digital learning tools such as interactive storybooks and educational games, and strong collaboration with families and local communities. These strategies remind us that language learning should always be meaningful, engaging, and culturally responsive. As future educators, we have an important responsibilities. Our role not only to teach children how to communicate in English, but our role is also help them appreciate diversity, celebrate their own identities, and respect the identities with others. When children feel represented, respected, and included, they become more confident learners. When they are confident learners, they become better communicators. And when they become better communicators, they are better prepared to participate in an increasingly interconnected world. I would like to sincerely thank both of our panelists, Ms. Shafika and Ms. Wahida, for sharing their valuable ideas, thoughtful reflection, and practical teaching strategies. Thank you as well to our respected lecturer, evaluators, and audience members for your attention and support throughout today's forum. We hope that today's discussion has provided useful insight into how multicultural literary materials can enrich bilingual and multilingual education. With that, we have come to the end of our academic forum. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.